Hi everyone, I hope you all are doing good, and today we are here to learn about integers, and we have learned till the multiplication of integers, and today we are going to study further after that. So इसके बाद हम देखते हैं, हमने पढ़ा था कि अगर दो नेगेटिव नेगेटिव इंटीजर्स को हम मल्टीप्लाई करते हैं तो we get a positive integer, and if we multiply two different kind of integers, let it be positive and negative, so we get a negative integer. So what will happen if we multiply three or more negative integers? We know that when we multiply two negative integers we get a positive integer. So what happens when we multiply three or more negative integers? What happens then? So let's figure that out. So let's take an example of that. Let's say we have here -2. Let's make a size bit bigger. So we get -2 multiply -3, let's say, and multiply -4. So what will we get after multiplying these three negative numbers? So let's figure that out. Let's say first we multiply these two numbers, the first one. So if we multiply 2, -2 and -3, we will get -6, because these two are the negative integers. So when we multiply two negative integers we get a positive integer. So that is why हमने जब -2 और -3 को मल्टीप्लाई किया हमें मिला +6. इसके बाद हमारे पास है -4. अब ये सिचुएशन बनती है एक पॉजिटिव और एक नेगेटिव नंबर की. So we know that when we multiply a positive and a negative number we get a negative number. So 6 times 4 or 6 multiply 4 is 24, and that will be a negative integer. So I got -24. So overall what I have figured out is जब मैंने 3 negative numbers को multiply किया I got a negative integer. जब मैंने 3 नेगेटिव इंटीजर्स को मल्टीप्लाई किया मुझे एक नेगेटिव इंटीजर ही मिला. ओके, इस बार हम लेते हैं 4 नेगेटिव इंटीजर्स. इस बार हम 4 नेगेटिव इंटीजर्स लेंगे. सो लेट्स फिगर आउट व्हाट हैपेंस देन. लेट्स let this be the same. -2 multiply -3 multiply -4, and in last I am gonna multiply it with -1. So मुझे पता है यहाँ तक, since I have done it in the previous step, till here if I multiply -2 multiply -3 multiply -4 I will get -24, right? इसके बाद अगर मैं इसको मल्टीप्लाई करती हूँ -1 से, so now I have a situation of multiplying two negative numbers. दो नेगेटिव नंबर्स हैं मेरे पास. सो जब हम दो नेगेटिव नंबर्स को मल्टीप्लाई करते हैं हमें मिलता है एक पॉजिटिव नंबर. सो 24 multiply 1 is 24, and that will be positive as well. So I got a positive number this time. So now I have figured out when I have multiplied 3 negative integers I have got a negative integer as a product. And when I have multiplied 4 negative integers I have got a positive integer as a product. So what does that mean? This was a situation where I have the number of the number that I have multiplied. I have multiplied 3 integers, right? So that was odd. 3 is odd, right? मैंने 3 नेगेटिव इंटीजर्स को मल्टीप्लाई किया है और 3 क्या होता है, एक ऑड नंबर होता है. इसके बाद मैंने किया है मल्टीप्लाई 4 नेगेटिव नंबर्स को और 4 क्या होता है, एक इवन नंबर होता है. तो आई हैव ऑब्जर्व्ड जब मैंने 3 इंटीजर्स मल्टीप्लाई किए, दैट इज़ व्हेन द नंबर ऑफ मल्टीप्लायर्स is odd, that means that time we get a negative integer as a product. लेकिन जब number of multipliers हमारे पास even होते हैं तब हमें मिलता है एक positive integer as a product. So I hope this is clear to all of you. You can take the example of 1 as well. So let's take 1 minus 1 multiply minus 1. So I have multiplied minus 1 2 times and I got 1 because हम नेगेटिव और नेगेटिव दो नंबर हैं हमारे पास जो दोनों नेगेटिव हैं, तो हमें मिलेगा एक पॉजिटिव नंबर. इसके बाद हम चलते हैं, लेट्स मल्टीप्लाई 1 3 टाइम्स. सो minus 1 multiply minus 1 multiply minus 1. So here I will get, since I know minus 1 multiply 1 is 1, so 1 multiply minus 1 will be minus 1. So this time I have got minus 1. Now let's multiply it 4 times. Minus 1 multiply minus 1 multiply minus 1 multiply one more time minus 1. So this time I know यहाँ से लेके यहाँ तक अगर मैं 3 बार मल्टीप्लाई करूँ, सो इससे पहले स्टेप में मेरे पास आया था minus 1. And if I again multiply this with minus 1, I will get 1. I will get positive 1. Since they both are negative, we are multiplying two negative integers. We are going to get a positive integer. That is why I got a positive integer. So I have taken 3 examples जिसमें पहली बार हमने 1 को 2 बार मल्टीप्लाई किया था, तो हमें मिला पॉजिटिव इंटीजर, राइट. सेकेंड टाइम में हमने 1 को 3 बार मल्टीप्लाई किया था, तो आई गॉट नेगेटिव 1. And in the last I have multiplied 1 4 times and I got positive integer again. So this proves that if the number of multiplier, if the number of negative multipliers is odd, then the product is negative, and if it is even, then the product will be positive. So I hope this is clear to everyone, this first point, product of 3 or more negative integers. All right, so now here as well, if we see here a special case, consider the following statements and resultant products. When we multiplied minus 1 by minus 1, we got positive 1. Then we multiplied minus 1 times minus 1 multiply minus 1, we got minus 1. Then we multiply minus 1 4 times, we got positive 1. Then we multiply minus 1 5 times and we got minus 1. This means that if the integer minus 1 is multiplied even number of times, the product is positive 1. And if the integer minus 1 is multiplied odd number of times, the product is minus 1. You can check this by making pairs of minus 1 in the statement. This is useful in working out the products of integers. Okay, so we find that if the number of negative integers is a product in a product is even, if the number of negative integers in a product is even, then the product is a positive integer, and if the number of negative integers in a product is odd, then the product is a negative integer. So I hope that is clear to all of you. Now let's take one example. The product minus 9 multiply minus 5 multiply minus 6 multiply minus 3 is positive, whereas the product minus 9 multiply minus 5 multiply 6 multiply minus 3 is negative. Why? Why? Because this time I have got in this one, जो पहला केस है इसमें हमारे पास चार जो नंबर्स को हम मल्टीप्लाई कर रहे हैं वो सारे नेगेटिव हैं. सो यानी कि हमारे पास चार नेगेटिव इंटीजर्स हैं इन आवर प्रोडक्ट. सो अकॉर्डिंग टू दिस स्टेटमेंट वी शुड गेट अ पॉजिटिव प्रोडक्ट, right? So when you multiply these four integers together, you will get a positive integer. That and in this in the second case हमारे पास तीन इंटीजर्स नेगेटिव हैं जबकि एक इंटीजर हमारे पास पॉजिटिव है. सो जब तीन नेगेटिव इंटीजर्स को आप मल्टीप्लाई करोगे तो आपको मिलेगा एक नेगेटिव इंटीजर. जब आप तीन नेगेटिव इंटीजर्स को मल्टीप्लाई करोगे तो आपको प्रोडक्ट एक नेगेटिव इंटीजर मिलेगा. उसके बाद जब आप उस नेगेटिव इंटीजर को एक पॉजिटिव इंटीजर के साथ मल्टीप्लाई करोगे तो आपको दोबारा नेगेटिव इंटीजर मिलेगा. दैट इज़ वाई दिस product has given us negative integer and this has given us positive integer. Okay, now the second example is, what will be the sign of the product if we multiply together 8 negative integers and 3 positive integers? So 8 negative integers, क्योंकि 8 is a okay, since 8 is a where were we? Yes, since 8 is an even number, so you are multiplying 8 negative integers, which is an even number, so you will get a positive integer from here. और जब आप पॉजिटिव इंटीजर्स को मल्टीप्लाई करते हो तब तो आपको पॉजिटिव मिलता ही है. डजेंट मैटर वो आप कितने नंबर्स को मल्टीप्लाई कर रहे हो, वेदर इट इज़ इवन और दैट डजेंट मेक एनी डिफरेंस. So since this will give you positive, this will give you positive, so together they will give you a positive integer. Number A. Let's talk about number B. 5 negative integers and 4 positive integers. So हमें positive integers के बारे में तो सोचना ही नहीं है क्योंकि positive integers तो हमें हमेशा positive integer ही देंगे. We need to think about the negative ones. So here 5 negative integers. 5 is an odd number, so that is why this will give you a negative integer. Then this will give you a negative integer, this will give you a positive integer, so together you are going to have a positive and a negative, and a positive and a negative makes a negative integer. So together this B part will give you a negative integer. Now C is minus 1 12 times. If you multiply minus 1 12 times, so what is 12? What kind of number is 12? Is it even or odd? So yes, we know that it is an even number. So that is why if you multiply minus 1 12 times, you are going to get positive 1. You are going to get plus 1. क्योंकि 12 एक even number है, this is why you are going to get a positive integer. Now minus 1 2m times m is a natural number. So what's 2m? Let's say m is a natural number. So natural numbers क्या होते हैं हमारे पास? Natural numbers are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and so on. So 2m, let's say m is equal 1. So 2m will be 2 times 1, isn't it? That will be 2 multiply 1, that will give you 2. Let's say if m is equal 4, then 2 multiply 4 will be 8. Let's say m is equal 6. Let's say m is equal 5. Let's take an odd number. Now 2 times 5 is equal 10. So you can see all of them are even numbers. All of these 2m are even numbers. So that means here 1 is multiplied 2m times. So 2m is an even number. So again you are multiplying -1 even number of times. So that is why it will give you +1. So I hope that is clear to everyone. Now let's move on to properties of multiplication of integers. So here we are going to learn some properties. Number 1 is closure under multiplication. Commutative property, multiplication by 0, multiplicative identity, associative property and distributive property. We are going to learn these several properties of multiplication of integers. So now we will learn that one by one. So number 1 is closure under multiplication. So we have learned this closure under addition also, closure under subtraction also. So what was that? We have learned that a plus b, if a and b are integers, then a plus b is also an integer. If a minus b, a and b are integer, then a minus b or b minus a is also an integer. So does it apply for multiplication also? Let's figure that out. So we have, let's say, two integers, let's say -20 and -5. So when you multiply both of them, you will get 100. And 100 is an integer. Again, if you multiply -15, multiply 17, you will get -255, which is again an integer. Again, if you multiply 30, -30 multiplied 12, you will get -360, which is again an integer. So by this we can figure out that integers are closed under multiplication. That means if a multiply b is an integer for all integers a and b. Okay, you can try some more examples on your own to understand it better way. So we have figured out that integers are closed under multiplication. If you multiply two integers, you will always get an integer. Okay, now we need to figure out the commutative property of integers for multiplication. Now we have learned that if a and b are integers, then a plus b is equal b plus a, but a minus b was not equal to b minus. तो हमने देखा था कि एडिशन तो कम्यूटेटिव प्रॉपर्टी को फॉलो करता था, बट क्या सब्ट्रैक्शन भी कम्यूटेटिव प्रॉपर्टी को फॉलो करता था? नो. वी हैव ऑल्सो taken an example to prove these two. We have learned that integers are commutative under addition, but not under subtraction. So now we need to figure out, is a multiply b is equal b multiply a. अगर ये प्रूव हो गया तो दैट मीन्स दे फॉलो द कम्यूटेटिव प्रॉपर्टी. इंटीजर्स फॉलो द कम्यूटेटिव प्रॉपर्टी ऑफ मल्टीप्लिकेशन. But if that does not prove, that means they are not commutative. So let's take an example. Let's take a simple example, 2 multiply 3. So 2 and 3 are integers, right? Is equal 3 multiply 2. So what's 2 multiply 3? It is 6. And what's 3 multiply 2? It is 6 as well. So yeah, that follows. But let's take some negative example also. So let's take this time minus 2 multiply 3 is equal 3 multiply minus 2. Does that also follow? Okay, let's figure that out. So minus 2 multiply 3, here we have one negative and one positive integer. So we know that when we multiply one positive and one negative integer, we get a negative integer. So minus तो रहेगा ही रहेगा. उसके बाद हमारे पास आता है 2 multiply 3 is equal 6. So that is minus 6. Okay. Now 3 multiply minus 2 is again minus 6, because this is the same case, one positive and one negative. Now let's take an example of where both the integers are negative. So here let's say minus 2 and minus 3 it is this time. And here it is minus 3 multiply minus 2. Okay, so we know here we have a case of where we are multiplying two negative integers. So when we know that when we multiply two negative integers, we get a positive integer. So minus 2 minus 3 is going to be positive part 6. 2 times 3 is 6. Again 3 times 2 is 6, and both are going to be positive because we are multiplying two negative integers. So yes, all of these cases have proved that a multiply b is equal b multiply a. So we can say that wait a second, a multiply b is equal b multiply a. So yes, multiplication is commutative for integers. Okay, multiplication is commutative for integers, so they follow the commutative property. Okay, I hope this is clear to all of you. Now let's learn about multiplication by 0. So what do you know about whole numbers? What do you get when you multiply whole numbers by 0? So everyone must know when you multiply whole numbers by 0, it gives you 0, and it is same for integers as well. when you multiply, 0 doesn't care about integers, fractions, or natural numbers, whole numbers. When whatever you multiply by 0, you are only going to get 0. Okay, so when you multiply an integer by 0, let's say a is an integer, so a multiply 0 is equal 0 multiply a is equal 0. This is only going to give you 0. Okay, now let's talk about multiplicative identity. So we have learned about additive identity. What was that? It was you multiply such number to to an integer that you get the same integer. So what was that? The additive identity for the additive identity for integers was 0. Right, it was 0, because when you add 0 to something, then only you are going to get the same number. अगर आप किसी नंबर में 0 ऐड करोगे तभी आपको वो नंबर मिलेगा. ओके, सो एडिटिव आइडेंटिटी जो इंटीजर्स की थी वो 0 थी. नाउ व्हाट इज मल्टीप्लिकेटिव आइडेंटिटी? What number you should multiply by the number for which we want the multiplicative identity? We need to multiply 1. Okay, this is also for the whole numbers. Whole numbers में भी जब हम 1 को multiply करते हैं तभी हमें वो number मिलता है. And this is same for integers. If you multiply 1 with them, let's say we have these some examples on the screen. Minus 3 multiply 1 is minus 3, minus 4 multiply 1 is minus 4, 1 multiply minus 5 is minus 5. So you have to multiply 1 in order to get the same number. So this shows that multiplicative identity for integer 1 is the multiplicative identity for integers also. So if somebody asks you what is the multiplicative identity for integers, you say that is 1. Okay, so in general for any integer a, we have a multiply 1 is equal 1 multiply a. Okay, is equal a. When you multiply 1, only then you are going to get the same number. Okay, 0 is the additive identity. As I told you, 0 was the additive identity which we have figured out, whereas 1 is the multiplicative identity for integers. We get additive inverse of an integer when of an integer a when we multiply minus 1 to a. That is, a multiply minus 1 is equal minus 1 multiply a is equal minus a. Okay, so I hope multiplicative identity is clear to everyone. Now let's learn about associativity for multiplication. So we have also learned about the associative property for integers. Do they follow associative property? So we have figured out yes that they follow. Now do they follow associative property for multiplication also? So let's figure that out. Let's learn that with an example. Let's take an example here. Let's say we have minus 2. We have minus 2 multiply in bracket minus 3 multiply 4. So that will give us minus 2 multiply, we know that minus 3 multiply 4 is minus 12, because again 1 is positive and 1 is negative, so plus minus minus. So अब हमारे पास दोनों ही पॉजिटिव दोनों ही नेगेटिव है, तो हमें मिलेगा एक पॉजिटिव नंबर विच इज गोइंग टू बी, वी नो दैट 2 multiply 24 is 2 multiply 12 is 24. So this time we got 24. Now if we take this time, if I take minus 2 multiply minus 3 in bracket and 4 is left alone outside the bracket, so this time we are going to multiply 2 and 3 for minus 2 and minus 3 first. So minus 2 minus 3 both are negative, so we are going to get a positive numbers, and that will be 6, right? Now 6 multiply 4 is equal 24. So do we get the same number in both the cases? Yes, we got the same number. We got 24 in each case. So that means yes, multiplication integers follow the associative property for multiplication. Okay, we have figured out a multiply b multiply c, a multiply b under bracket multiply c is equal a multiply b multiply c under bracket. Okay, the product of three integers does not depend upon the grouping of integers, and this is called associative property for multiplication of integer. Whether you group these two together, whether you group these two together, you are going to get the same answer in both the cases. So I hope this is clear to everyone that integers follow the associative property of multiplication. Okay, now let's talk about what is the last property we have. We have distributive property. So what do we have in the distributive property? Okay, so now let's take an example of distributive. We have learned the distributive property for integers as well, right? So we have learned about the distributive property of integers as well, and we figured out that yes, they follow the distributive property. Now we are going to understand the distributive property of integers for multiplication. Okay, so let's take an example of that. इसी में ले लेते हैं. तो हमारे पास है, let's say we need to multiply 2 by 9 multiply 9. Okay, let's take it negative, and this one 5 plus 7. Let's take this. So minus 2 multiply, what's 5 plus 7? It is 12. So we get here minus 24, because minus and that's minus, that's plus, so minus plus is equal minus. So we got minus 24. Now let's do it this way. Minus 2 multiply 5. First we will multiply 2 by 5, then put a positive sign, the plus sign in between. Then we will multiply minus 2 multiply 7 is equal to multiply 5 is 10, and that too negative, plus minus 2 multiply 7 would be minus 14. Okay, so we have both in negative and we need to add them, so I am gonna get minus 24 from here. So I have got minus 24 in both the cases. What does that mean? It means I have got it means minus 2 multiply 5 plus 7 is equal minus 2 multiply 5 plus minus 2 multiply 7. So in general we can say A multiply B plus C is equal A multiply B plus A multiply C. So that means it follows the distributive property for multiplication. Integers follow the distributive property of multiplication. Okay, you can take some more examples from here. Let's take one example of subtraction as well. Let's say this time we have minus 2 multiply 7 minus 5. Okay, so here I'm gonna get minus 2, and we know that 7 minus 2 is 7 minus 5 is 2, isn't it? And minus 2 multiply 2 is minus 4. Now let's do it that way. 2 multiply 7 minus 2 multiply 5. Okay, here I know that minus 2 multiply 7 is minus 14, isn't it? And here I have minus 10. Okay, so now this will be equal minus 14 minus 14 minus minus plus, that will be this, and minus 14 plus 10 is going to be minus 4. So again I have got the same answer. I have got minus 4 here as well, and I have got minus 4 here as well. So that means in this case as well I have verified this property. So that means that clearly verifies that the integers follow the distributive property for multiplication. Okay, so we have learned the properties of the multiplication properties of integers. Now it's time to learn about division of integers. It's time to learn about the division of integers. So we have learned about addition of integers, we have learned about the subtraction of integers, we have learned about the multiplication of integers, and now we are going to learn about division of integers. So division of integers is somehow identical to the division of whole numbers, and the properties are like when you multiply two negative integers, you get a positive integer. Here as well, when you divide two negative integers, you get a positive quotient. Okay, so this is somewhat same, so let's learn about it. So first one is if we divide a negative integer by a positive integer. So first example is of when we divide a negative integer. Let's say we have minus 10, and we need to divide this by a positive integer, which is, let's say, 2. So we divided like the whole numbers. जैसे हम whole numbers को divide करते हैं, जैसे हम 10 को 2 से divide करते हैं, वैसे ही हम minus 10 को भी 2 से divide करेंगे, तो हमें मिलता है 5. When we divide 10 by 2, we get 5. But this is a situation where I have negative 10. I am dividing a negative number by a positive number. So when we multiply a positive and a negative number, we get a negative one, right? So this time also we are going to get a negative quotient. we are going to get a negative answer. So that will be minus 5, because the divisor is positive and the dividend is yes, the divisor is positive and the dividend is negative. So हमें जो quotient मिलेगा वो मिलेगा negative. ओके नाउ दूसरा केस बनता है जब दोनों पॉजिटिव हों. तो जब दोनों पॉजिटिव होंगे तो इट इज़ अ होल नंबर सिचुएशन, सो दैट इज गोइंग टू बी पॉजिटिव ओनली. ओके वन कंडीशन इज व्हेन द dividend is positive but the divisor is negative. This time as well, since both are different, that means we are going to get a negative one. Okay, and the last situation is where both are negative. So when both are negative, we get a positive, like in the multiplication. Okay, like in multiplication we get, when we multiply two negative integers, we get a positive integer. This time as well, जब हम दो नेगेटिव नंबर्स को डिवाइड करेंगे, जब डिविडेंड भी नेगेटिव होगा और डिवाइज़र भी नेगेटिव होगा, तब हमें मिलेगा पॉजिटिव क्वोशंट. ओके, आई होप दिस इज़ क्लियर टू एवरीवन. नाउ see here as well, we can see when we had divided minus 12 by 2, we get minus 6. ओके क्योंकि डिविडेंड हमारा नेगेटिव था और डिवाइज़र हमारा पॉजिटिव था, तो हमें मिला एक नेगेटिव क्वोशंट. सो व्हेन वी डिवाइड अ नेगेटिव इंटीजर बाय अ पॉजिटिव इंटीजर, वी डिवाइड देम एज होल नंबर एंड देन पुट अ माइनस साइन बिफोर द क्वोशंट. ओके now secondly, when we divide a positive integer by a negative integer, we first divide them as whole number and then put a minus sign before the quotient. It is same as I told you. So a divided by minus b is equal minus a divided by b is, yes, it doesn't make any difference whether b is negative or a is negative. अगर दोनों के साइन अलग अलग हैं तो हमारा जो आंसर होगा वो माइनस में आएगा, और अगर दोनों के साइन सेम है, अगर ये भी नेगेटिव हो और ये भी नेगेटिव हो, लाइक इन दिस केस माइनस ए डिवाइडेड बाई माइनस बी इज़ इक्वल ए डिवाइडेड बाई बी, यानी कि उसको हम होल नंबर्स की तरह डिवाइड करेंगे और हमारा जो आंसर आएगा वो आएगा पॉजिटिव. ओके, नाउ लेट्स लर्न अबाउट प्रॉपर्टीज़ ऑफ डिवीजन ऑफ इंटीजर्स. So as we have learned about the properties of multiplication, हमने multiplication की properties के बारे में भी पढ़ा है अभी, associative, commutative, closure property. So क्या is 4 divided by 8 is equal 8 divided by 4? What do you say? Is 4 divided by 8 and 8 divided by 4 are same? What do you think? So when we divide 4 by 8, we get 1 by 2, we get half, and here we get 2. So are they same? No. That means they do not follow the commutative property, because in commutative property we say a divided by is equal b divided by a, but that's not true, right? So that is why integers does not follow the commutative property for division. Okay, now there are few more properties, so they do not follow the, and if we talk about dividing like whole numbers, any integer divided by 0 is meaningless. हमने we have multiplied the integers by 0 and we got 0. But when we divide the integers by 0, what do we get? We get nothing. It is not defined. If somebody asks you, if we divide integers by 0, what do we get? We get, it is not defined. We get nothing. Okay? It is not defined. Okay? Now, when we divide a whole number by 1, it gives the same whole number. So it is same for the multiplication. When we multiplied 1 by any integer, we get the same integer. And similarly, if we divide any integer by 1, we get the same integer. Okay? Like if you divide minus here, if you divide minus 11 by 1, you get minus 11 only. Okay? So this shows that negative integer divided by 1 gives the same negative integer. So any integer divided by 1 gives the same integer. In general, for any integer a divided by 1 is equal 0. Okay. What happens when we divide an integer by minus 1? So what happens when we divide by 1, the integer remains the same. But what happens when we divide that by minus 1? So if we divide a negative integer by negative 1, it becomes positive, and when we divide a positive integer by minus 1, like here, it becomes negative. Okay? Like here you can see minus 8 divided by minus 1 is equal 8. Okay, since both are negative, both the divisor and the dividend are negative, that means we get a positive quotient. So when we divide any negative integer by 1, we get positive integer of the same number. Okay, now again if we divide a negative integer by the, if we divide the positive integer by the negative 1, we get negative integer. So we can also say that the sign of the dividend changes if we divide it by minus 1. जो नेगेटिव था वो पॉजिटिव हो गया और जो पॉजिटिव था वो नेगेटिव हो गया. तो हम कह सकते हैं कि ये साइन चेंज करता है. इफ़ वी डिवाइड एनी इंटीजर बाय माइनस 1, it changes its sign, isn't it? Yes. Okay. So I hope that is clear to all of you, and I guess that's all for integers. We have learned each and everything about integers, and in the next session we are going to learn about fractions. So I hope you all like this video, and you can subscribe the channel if you like the video, and if you want to learn more, you can come at the same time. The next class will be on 10th of August, and that day we are going to learn about fractions. So